All right, class, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is. I'm back again doing another video for you. This is going to be a quick review on the Articles of Confederation. So the last video, which I linked up here for you, was one about colonial policies and 13 colonies and kind of the road to revolution and the colonies becoming independent. So understand, once the colonies become politically independent of the British, they get the opportunity to form their own government. And the government that they form is known as the Articles of Confederation. Now in class, earlier back in the year, in September, when we discussed the Articles of Confederation, we talked about the fact of it being a weak government. I always like to describe it as kind of a bridge from like the American Revolution to the Constitution. It wasn't a plan of government that really had the ability and the power to last long. It kind of served its purpose. It got us to the Constitution, which is still our plan of government today. And that next video I do in the Constitution will be much more lengthy than this. I actually will probably break it down in multiple segments. Okay, so when we talk about the Articles of Confederation, I always like to say first, if it was created out of fear. Remember, the colonists just won a war against the British. Their biggest problem with them is that the central authority that the British had over the colonies, it was just too strong. So when they had the opportunity to form their own government, they didn't give a lot of power to the central government. So, Exhibit 1, and it's going to probably all be backwards, right? State power was greater than central power. This is the U.S. under the Articles of Confederation. So the states had the majority of the power. Why? Because the framers of this plan of government, the men who formed this plan of government, they were too scared of giving over that power to the central government because they didn't want to be back in a similar situation which they were under the British. All right, so the states had the majority of the power. It was a weak central government. Central, federal government, all the same. National government, all the same thing. Central, federal, national. First and foremost, there was only one branch under the Articles of Confederation, and that branch was the legislative branch. All right, so the 13 colonies became the 13 states. Each state under the Articles of Confederation had one representative representing their state in the legislative branch. So think about the problem with that, right? A state like Massachusetts, when this government was formed, that had approximately like 1 million people in it, got one member in the legislative branch to represent their entire state. Meanwhile, a state like Georgia, who had probably under 100,000 people at this time, had one member in the legislative branch to represent their state. So Massachusetts could look at a situation like that and say, hey, wait, we have like 10 times the amount of people, so why does Georgia get the same amount of say in the central government as we do? It's not fair to us. Yet Georgia's going to say, yeah, well, you can't give all that power to the big states or to the heavily populated states. It's not fair. We should have an equal amount of say. We're all states. All right, so that was it. There was no president under the Articles. There was no Supreme Court under the Articles. All that comes later under the Constitution, which will be the next video review that I put up for you guys. A couple other things. Congress couldn't collect taxes, right? Congress could not collect taxes. And think about it. That's how the government gets its money from us, right? It collects taxes. Why? Because they were scared of that system which they just left. Remember how much they didn't like mercantilism. I showed that to you in the last video. So really, when we talk about the Articles of Confederation, we talk about it as a plan of government which did not work. The power was rested in the hands of the states. There was a weak central government. Most importantly, class, there was no national unity. I think one of the analogies I like to use when I describe that plan of government, it's like, the basketball team, where every player is concerned really about like, how many points they score individually. They're not concerned about the overall team score, right? And as a result, if you're going to have a government set up like that, with no concern about the national unity in the big picture, it's not going to work. Just like that basketball team where everybody's only concerned about how much points they score, they're probably not going to be that successful. The only positive of this plan of government is they did recognize the United States was going to get a lot bigger, right? They did recognize we were going to expand and we were going to take land, and they came up with something known as the Northwest Ordinance, right? The Northwest Ordinance set up a plan to admit new states. It was their plan to admit new states to the Union. That's the only real positive we talk about in regard to the Articles. Like I said, it was a bridge from the Revolution to the Constitution. And that's what this review is all about. If you have any questions, reach out to me via email. If you're watching these and your classmates have questions, forward them a link. Send them to my webpage. It's on the school page. All right. If you get there, you get access to all this. And I know Mrs. Moore is going to be putting this up on Google Classroom for those of you in my COTEL classes. Hope all is well, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.